Good afternoon, live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Mint Special Economic Panorama. Our virtual discussion this afternoon, COVID-19 second wave, a business perspective, implications on business. Good afternoon, I'm your host, Andy Hodges. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimpaper's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, LEDRIS. Please also tune in to Economic Panorama live on Capitalk every Thursday at 3 p.m. Now, should you have any comments or views on our program this afternoon, please feel free to contact us via our Facebook page, Zimpaper's TV network, or via our Twitter handle at ZTN News. Zimbabwe continues to reel under the COVID-19 second wave. As at the 27th of January 2021, there were 32,304 cumulative cases, 23,687 recoveries, and tragically, 1,122 deaths. Under level 4 lockdown, most businesses, except for essential services, are seeing a knock-on effect, not only on their production, but in some cases their very survival. Formal business is not the only one to suffer. Given that 76% of total employment in Zimbabwe is informal, under the lockdown, a significant loss of employment and income will be experienced by the majority of Zimbabwe's citizens. Today we discuss the implications of the COVID-19 second wave and the response on the economy and businesses. We also take stock of Zimbabwe's COVID-19 national response from a business perspective. And we are joined virtually by Sekai Kuvarika. She's Chief Executive Officer at the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, and Busisa Moyo, a leading Zimbabwean industrialist and board chair of the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA. Welcome to the Mint Special, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Sekai, let me start with you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Sekai, how in your view will the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic affect not just business, but also the Zimbabwean economy?
I think the major effect of this second wave is really an acceleration of the slowdown in the economic recovery that we are pursuing as an economy, as industry. You are aware that we are coming as industry from quite a stretched period of low levels of capacity utilization, and we were looking forward to begin to come out of that with the stabilization progress that had been achieved with last year's transitional stabilization program and the currency measures that were put in place. So clearly, this second wave is just going to really slow down the gears of growth that we had started to engage. And I think a lot of companies are also looking at the impact as slowing down some of their plans because of the high cost structure that has been introduced by this COVID. So I would say in a nutshell, the real impact is that it will slow everything down.
Zimbabwe's largest companies in your sector, and of course on top of your chair at the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA. I mean, your company, United Refineries Limited, produces and sells a collection of grocery brands in the country and especially cooking oil. So in your comment, your comment on the impact of the second wave of COVID-19 on the economy and how that's been affected, but more importantly, you know, from the perspective of your own company, the practical problems that you're experiencing or challenges you're experiencing under the COVID-19 and the COVID-19 second wave. Busisa?
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for that question. I think as you know, most companies, we had shut down for the December shutdown period for scheduled maintenance. And that fell smack on with regards to the second wave. And so companies are trying to reopen during a lockdown. So we had a shutdown, then a follow-on from that, a lockdown. So this has serious consequences for business and makes it difficult to reopen and get back to business as normal. Of course, with these lockdown comes challenges with regard to borders, access to raw materials, movements of raw materials, but it also affects the psychology of workers. So you find that psychologically, workers are very much under a cloud of fear as to how they operate from here, and then also that translates into the investors who are fearful to make commitments, plans for the new year, to expand, to do things in organizations, so that creates a bit of a cutback on that front as well.
Mm. I wanted to ask you this as an industrialist and businessman. Zimbabwe is currently under 30-day level 4 lockdown, and indications are, if anything in the press is to go by, that they could possibly be extended even further. So your comments on the government's response, was it appropriate? And also, how is business coping? Because in some countries around the world, they've had a tier system where some hotspots are at level 4, some are at level 1, and so on. And people may be advocating for that. So, what is your response to government response, and also how is business coping with this?
I think we understand, Andy, the response taken by government. We understand it. It has implications. I think the cases were going up. We had lots of events that happened in the month of December, and we had lots of visits from those coming from outside, in the diaspora, visiting in the southern part of the country where our factory is. For example, in Bulawayo, we have a large diaspora contingent coming in. So we understand the response to reduce the impact and the communities spread of COVID-19. We do understand it. However, we cannot get away from the implications of these lockdowns and what they mean for business, which is greater difficulty, greater challenges. January is a short month because we are on annual shutdowns, and now on top of a lockdown.
Sakai, I'd like you to comment on how business is coping, because it appears that come the end of last year there was some revival happening in the business sector. Companies had opened again, the informal economy had sort of started again, and businesses hopefully were thinking 2021 will be a good year. In fact, they were happy to get rid of 2020. So your comment on how they're coping. But I'd also like to find out, because it's clear that we must ensure as a nation that everybody is safe, including workers in business. So what are you doing as business to ensure that workers in the sector are, for example, tested regularly, and that all COVID-19 protection protocols are implemented?
Thank you, Andy. I think when you say how is industry coping, I would say that I think we are very clear on the COVID containment measures. What we are not clear on is the measures to address the impact on business from these COVID containment measures. There we are not yet clear. So clearly, businesses are actually going through a few anxieties around, number one, the impact of COVID itself and how it's going to affect their business. But the other level of anxiety is coming from, so what's going to happen? How are all these things going to be addressed? What sort of reprieve are we going to get either from our government or from elsewhere? So that's where I think there isn't much clarity in terms of what sort of relief can be extended to business. Because clearly, while we are implementing COVID containment measures, we also do need a business rescue measures in order to make sure that our businesses actually do not go under. So that's one area that I think is a worrying area for business. And I think there are a few things that we can do, painfully though, but I believe that the authorities do have a few options that they can explore. In terms of what we are doing, companies are testing their employees quite regularly. Most of them, when they came back to reopen in January, they were testing their employees, and they test them periodically depending on the level of risk that they are looking at. Companies are providing protective PPE. They are also providing very robust COVID management protocols in the workplaces, medical access to medical care. We've got companies that have doctors, dedicated doctors for their companies. Some have medical facilities in their factories. Others have a referral system that they work with. The employees that happen to catch COVID are immediately referred for treatment, and companies are making sure that employees and their families are actually treated. Companies are also providing transport for their employees. Quite a lot of companies are picking up their employees from their places of residence. And in most cases, door to door, really, not from any place of gathering, they are doing that. I think in a lot of cases, companies have continued also to make sure that even employees that may not be coming to work are also continue to get paid in most cases. And also, I think it's important to note the commitment of industry and companies to the response to this COVID, but also to then highlight that all these measures also really mean that the costs for business are also because it's a significant cost that they've had to incur.
I'd like to ask you both. Let me start with you, Busisa. Obviously, it's important that business comes up with survival strategies to maintain their profitability, to maintain their market share, and of course to maintain their production. So what advice would you give to business or the business sector on how they can survive and possibly even thrive under the COVID-19, especially during the lockdown period?
Thank you, Andy. I think there are opportunities depending on sector, which sector you're in. There are some sectors that are harder hit than others, where it's more difficult to innovate. I think here of sectors like tourism, very difficult to innovate there. But for industry, there are opportunities in commodities. We've seen that during lockdowns, people consume more. They need more food. They want to secure their food items. So those are opportunities. But I think that the big opportunity is to configure the economy for resilience and not just competitiveness. And resilience, by that I mean localizing value chains, making sure that we take things from start to finish within the country to a certain extent. Can we do everything? The answer is no. But there are some critical things that we must always secure because these pandemics may be with us for a long time. We are hearing of new variants. We are hearing of, you alluded to the, further lockdowns and the like. So this creates a horizon. If we look further down into the future, we may have more disruptions. And so we have to configure economies for resilience. It means that a company like ours, like United Refineries, has to look at backward integration and perhaps forward integration into chicken feed, into animal feed, so that we are resilient as an economy, not just looking at the efficiency angle. The efficiencies are important. Consumers will always want a more affordable product, so we have to be sensitive to that. Quality remains a key attribute that we must pay attention to. But I'm adding a third dimension, other than cost, other than quality, resilience. We have to configure businesses. We have to configure the economy as a whole for resilience. The fourth element that I wish to highlight is collaboration. I think, as an offshoot of resilience, is that we probably need to collaborate a whole lot more across sectors, collaboration, government to business, business to government, and within sectors, and ally to make sure that that resilience has depth. For example, I think here of the packaging industry. We may have to look at how do we relate to the packaging industry in such a way that we are able to have resilience. The farming sector or agricultural sector and manufacturing, how do we interface the two so that we have a resilient economy that is working cohesively to make sure that we can survive and shelter through these difficult times, in particular the base of the pyramid needs, food, shelter, clothing, water, and the like. Those things, energy, power. We need to make sure that we collaborate for resilience. So those are some of the things that I would tease out and flesh out as potential opportunities for a business person trying to navigate this very difficult time of COVID.
Sakai, you heard there what Busisa said, and I'm sure the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries must have come up with some strategies that they imparted to their members. I mean, he talked about resilience, localizing value chains, backward integration, collaboration, and of course he highlighted resilience numerous times. So is there anything you could add to that? What is CZI saying to its members for them to be able to survive and even thrive during this difficult time?
I think I would want to emphasize the need for collaboration that Busisa has just highlighted. If there was ever a time for the private sector and for business to be more strongly organized and coordinated and proactive, it is now. So I would actually say that what Busisa just said actually then amplifies the call we have for all actors in the different subsectors and in the different value chains, that we need to be more actively organized and more actively working together on collective initiatives that address value chain development, like Busisa has said, speaking about localization of our value chains, but also looking at the resilience of our industries and our economies. I'm sure COVID has shown us that we need that to be more. I think it to be really high priority in what we are doing. So as a confederation, I think where we are is really amplifying that call that we are calling on the different subsectors of the economy to work better together, or to get even better organized. We are actually currently calling for a revitalization or revival of our agribusiness forum or agribusiness committee, so that all the actors in the agro value chains are able to sort of map out various activities and initiatives related to the different value chains as we tackle this new era that we are in, but also as we try to progress on our existing aspirations and plans for the different value chains. So I would say that really COVID is another call to action for industry to be better organized. So thank you very much. I'll just make a call that when companies see us calling them again to CZI, that we need to organize our value chains and our subsectors. Please, this is the time to do that.
Thank you. You're watching the Mint Special, Economic Panorama. Our discussion this afternoon, COVID-19 second wave, a business perspective, implications on business. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV network, ZTN, and our partners, the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, LEDRIS. Please also tune into Economic Panorama live on Capitalk every Thursday at 3 p.m. Sakai, you know, business obviously has a key role to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, not only internally in their own organizations, but also on a national level. So let me ask you that. What is business doing to help the government or to help the nation fight COVID in the communities, for example, rather not just in their own businesses?
Okay, thank you very much, Andy. I think first and foremost, I'll just highlight that when we are looking at business, we are looking at businesses in industry and the different subsectors we operate. We are also looking at medical business, you know, in terms of medical health services providers, the health insurance providers and the hospitals and others. And our role is to ensure that our society survives this pandemic, because at the center of everything is the preservation of human life. And as business, we are committed to that, not just to our employees. And what we are doing as business is that we've got an initiative. We had already, in the first wave of COVID, put together what we call the Business Preparedness, Prevention and Response Initiative, where we were rallying different parts of industry to make various contributions. We made contributions to the public health facilities. We made contributions to private health facilities, and we made contributions that were targeted at our employees all across the country. I think in all sectors of business, this happened. And in terms of if you look at how we were organized, there was I Am for Bulawayo in Matabeleland, which was a collaboration between business and other non-state actors, including civil society. And in Manicaland, we had also CZI taking the lead there with the Manicaland business community and with the Rotary Club of Mutare. So what we are doing at the moment with this second wave, we are now looking at the vaccines as the priority in order to stop the transmission of the virus. And what business has undertaken to do is to ensure that we contribute to the national effort by again contributing financial resources for the procurement of vaccines that go to the priority groups in the national response. We also are going to be making sure that we make provision for the vaccination of our employees. I can also state that the medical aid societies are coming on board to ensure that they cover the people that are on medical aid with vaccinations. So we are actually currently organizing to see how that eventually actually looks like in terms of numbers of people to be covered and the amount of money that are going to be deployed. We do have a meeting tomorrow afternoon where we are going to be finalizing with the medical aid societies, with industry players, also with our colleagues from the insurance sector to try and make sure we quantify. But we are meeting together with the Chamber of Mines, the Bankers Association, the National Chamber of Commerce, rallying all contributions from the private sector.
All right, Busisa, in fact, it takes me to my next question. Sakai then talked about vaccines, and of course, number of countries are rolling out vaccines to their citizens. And the president of Zimbabwe, Dr. Edie Mnangagwa, also announced Zimbabwe does have a vaccination rollout plan. But do businesses have a vaccination plans in place for their own organizations? What would you say businesses should do when the vaccine comes to our shores?
There's two things, Andy, that I wish to highlight there, and it takes us back a little bit to your earlier point that we can talk about an insular approach to COVID-19, what we can do as businesses. But in addition to that, we need to also look at a regional play on COVID, because as we can see, these cases, they can be imported from South Africa, from Botswana, from Zambia. So you can't really be insular as a country on a standalone basis. But on a region basis, I think we need an approach. And this is not just for the vaccine, and this is not just for COVID containment measures, but also from a business point of view, because like we talk about local value chains, there's also regional value chains, which are just as critical, to this fight in COVID and the opportunities as regions, whether it's Malawi, Angola, Tanzania. In SADC, we can look at a SADC type approach in terms of business and what opportunities lie there. To your point about what is the plan for business? Businesses are willing to participate in a vaccine program. And those are the conversations that we are having now to say, what can we do? How can we contribute? We've already contributed to facilities. Sakai mentioned the I Am for Bulawayo, which I also am currently the chair. We are looking at how do we assist facilities. Similarly, we are also responding with capacity in terms of vaccination. We are aware that companies are already hamstrung in terms of viability. They have challenges, myriads of challenges, operational challenges, but there's still a willingness, because in business we take a longer term view to say, let's get over this, let's contribute now, Let's participate in a vaccination program that starts with the workers and staff that work in our businesses. They need to be vaccinated, and we are willing to come forward and participate in that. Their families, because if you vaccinate a member of staff and he goes back home and his family is still exposed, we still have a challenge. So it makes sense to vaccinate staff, employees, and their families. And so that's the statistics that need to be tabulated that Sakai is talking about, and CZI is well positioned. So is ZNCC, so is MCOS and other BMOs, BAZ, to come together and tabulate, workers and their families. What numbers are we talking about? And then we participate in a vaccination program. There's another opportunity that comes in here, which is to collaborate on logistics, but also to improve our healthcare facilities. Zinc tablets, we shouldn't be importing those. We should be at least contract manufacturing within the country. And Zimbabwe does have a reputation, a history of a vibrant pharmaceutical industry. And these are some of the things, certainly as we think of a ZIDA, for example, a development agency, how do we take advantage regionally to develop for this subcontinent, the 300 million people that are inside it? How do we create a healthcare services system for now and for the future? These are some of the conversations that we should be having now, and we are having them.
Sakai, we appreciate that we're in the middle of a COVID-19 lockdown and we are in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. However, we mustn't take our eyes away from the ball, which is that there's still the future out there, and we still need to strategize and come up with strategies for our future success and economic growth. And some critics have argued that the government does not have that clear, actionable strategic plan and response beyond the lockdown. It's almost as if we're reacting to what's happening now, whereby we can do that, but we mustn't also lose sight of the future plans and strategic plans that we have to make to revive ourselves. What would be your comment to that?
I would say that yes, the future is still to be tackled, and we now need to tackle it with a different lens, I would say. And I think we had planned for this future in terms of the immediate future in 2021, which was the 2021 national budget. We had put plans in place for the medium-term future, which is the 5-year National Development Strategy one, and the NDS one, which is our medium-term plan. And these are the plans that we had in place. I think the challenge for us now is how do we construct a COVID lens to apply to these plans that we had already put in place. We have been having some discussions in CZI, and I think we've got a few pillars that we believe that if we begin to put proposals to government and engage with government, most ideally we would like a joint initiative between the government and business that looks at business and economic continuity and begin to put, the lens on what will be the COVID impact on local demand, on international demand, on supply chains, on human capital and society, as well as on FDI inflows and on new investments, so that we see how these impact the short-term and the medium-term plans that we had put in place. And I would still say that over and above that, we need to continue to take our medicine. We had been really on a journey to stabilization, and we were trying to keep our eye on macroeconomic stability. And even though we are dealing with COVID, we should not put our eye off the ball, and we must continue with those policy measures. And I think these are some of the discussions that we are already having, and engagements, papers, and dialogue on these will be coming soon.
All right, Busisa, let's turn to the informal economy. I mean, you heard the statistics, 70%, 76% of total employment in Zimbabwe is currently informal. So I have a two-part question for you. One, how effective are lockdowns, given that most citizens simply just can't afford to stay home? They need to be on the street informally, making money in the SMEs and also as vendors, for example. And also, critics have argued that the lockdowns only flatten the economy, including livelihoods, especially in developing countries, instead of flattening the curve. So can formal business assist or help the informal sector survive during COVID-19?
Well, again, I think there are opportunities there. And during my time as CZI chair, we reached out to the informal sector to say, can we have, instead of cross-border trading, can we have in-border trading? Seeing as people can't travel out to South Africa and places like Botswana to import, can we connect and make sure that the local businesses also avail some of their products to that really a sales channel? And that's what the informal sector is largely. It's a distribution channel. And if we see it like that, then we will be able to collaborate as opposed to compete. Now, there are concerns about quality and the fact that, consumers wanted variety. But I think these are some of the realities that COVID-19 presents us, that we can collaborate across sectors and have these unique and not be caught up with the old construct and frameworks. I've been having the same conversations with labor, my good friend, Mr. Peter Mtasa, to say, let's disabuse ourselves of the world that was there during Cold War or pre-colonial days and realize we are living in a different type of environment, and we can't continue having the same conversations of masters and servants. Rather, let's look at collaborating as opposed to competing, winners and losers. Let's have a different kind of framework that takes us forward into the future. And so, again, with informal sector people are business people, but let's also realize that a lot of people are in informal sector because the formal sector has not been able to provide the kind of employment levels and absorb the graduates that are coming out of schools who don't have employment. And as long as we don't recognize that there are more people outside the labor force than in it, we will continue to create something for the few that are in as opposed to those that are outside. So these are some of the new conversations and disabusing ourselves of previous thinking that allows us to then innovate and navigate a way into the future and going forward.
I mean, you make a serious point there, because one area, of course, where there's been an explosion in terms of business interaction with their clients is through the internet and through IT-based solutions. So that's clearly one way, which was never really a traditional way of business getting its product to market. That's definitely one way, of course, that an opportunity can be driven from. Busisa, I want to ask you this. Some have argued that a bold, targeted fiscal expansion or public spending may be the only way to build a fair and what you like to call a resilient economic recovery from COVID-19. And a number of countries have increased their stimulus package to deal with the COVID-19 second wave. And you heard Sakai earlier talk about, will there be any form of business rescue plan or a new business rescue plan put in to help business survive over this period? But the question is, of course, can Zimbabwe afford it? Can we afford to increase our stimulus package to combat the second wave? And what can we do to ensure that the required fiscal space is there so that it doesn't have an impact on things like the exchange rate and inflation and so forth, and that it's contained within our ability to spend what we have?
So you bring a valid point, I think, and you've actually almost answered the question, is that we have to have a balance and we have to have a measured approach, and that our context is important. We are coming from a hyperinflationary period, and we've just managed to arrest inflation. I mean, from 35% month on month We are down to 5%, which shows that there is a lot of progress being made. There are arguments against it that, people are not paid well, the employees, civil servants are not happy. But those are arguments we can have and have measured responses and correction to the issue. My challenge with stimulus packages, coming especially, as a big pump into the economy, is that you could quite easily find yourself back in inflation, especially if you increase money supply, which tends to happen. So I am all for stimulus packages that are structured, preferably.
And I think we've lost sound on Basisa there, but obviously he's still with us. We'll go back to him. But Sakai, you did talk earlier about business rescue packages or government coming up with a new one. But let's talk about the one that they issued, the government announced last year, the Zimbabwe $18 billion stimulus package. The question is, do you know of any of your members through Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries that have actually benefited from that stimulus package put in place by the government last year?
I can't say I know of people that have benefited from it, but I'll probably just relay my understanding of that package for industry was that it was a guarantee fund, and which was supposed to enable banks to lend to companies. But my understanding was that there wasn't that liquidity in the banks to lend. There wasn't enough. Not that there was zero. But there was less money than was required to satisfy that demand. That's my understanding. I think government was very clear that it was actually a guarantee. It wasn't a pot of money. Right. It was a guarantee. So
yeah, but then
how really affected.
How then can you call for government to come in with a business rescue plan when it's clear that the business stimulus package or the rescue plan from last year wasn't as effective as everyone hoped? I mean, so how then can we make sure that if there is any plan that's put forth in 2021, it's effective and that businesses can draw down from banks on that guarantee? In fact, liquidity is provided for business to access facilities.
I would say that business rescue, I think, must actually be custom made. We must consider the circumstances we have, the limitations we have, and the feasibility of what measures we may put in place. So if there is limited fiscal space to do some of the ideal sort of stimulus and the packages that are needed, why don't we go to tax holidays, for example, some tax relief to companies over a period of time, maybe not even permanent relief, but to just say that maybe we have a period where we are not paying the taxes, and then we have a payment plan that after some time, companies can gradually begin to retire those tax obligations. That could also create some working capital room for companies, because one of the major constraints that companies are mentioning in terms of the impact of COVID and the impact of lockdown is working capital. And then if we can't access affordable finance from the banks, you are aware the interest rates are upwards of 50%. Clearly, some such measures would be welcome. So those kinds of measures would rescue business, number one. Number two, I think government could make a commitment for local procurement. That alone, just to say everything that we need to procure that is made locally must be bought locally. And that way you are actually giving back to industry the money to circulate and continue to finance production. I think we can also look at, we've got this 2% tax, which has not been an allowable expense for corporate tax. If that expense, that 2% tax can be relooked at, and if we can guarantee a stable macroeconomic environment, because that's one guarantee that is going to be key, that we need to remain in a stable environment. And if we can extend some of these measures, you've heard Busisa talk about You know, we are talking about the performance of the last stimulus, but we are also debating what would be the impact of such a stimulus on the economy. What would be the impact on it promoting business rescue or business recovery and growth? But what would also be the impact of that on inflation and on our currency,
Well, in
etc.
fact,
So
that takes me.
clearly,
That actually
we are
takes
in a
me.
bit of a
That takes me
bind
to my
and have to work
question.
as much as
Yeah,
we can.
that takes me to my question. Interesting enough, and it's my final question because we are coming to the end of the show. I'm not sure if Busisa Moyo is actually still with us because I'd like to ask you both. But let me start with you, Sakai. You know, as I said earlier, we need to look forward to the future. We're in 2021 January. So, what would be your economic outlook and projection for 2021?
I think I need new glasses, which I haven't put on yet, which is what I've just mentioned to you, and that's the economic that's the outlook that we are looking at.
So you still think that the growth of
wouldn't,
7.4%, inflation under control, exchange rate relatively stable during the course of the year, money supply under control, you think that those issues are still on the table and that we're not going to see any ripple effect from COVID-19, the second wave, in terms of some of the fundamentals? So don't you recall that the budget did state that one of the assumptions was that COVID-19 would abate in 2021 to some degree?
Exactly, that's my point. That you know, we actually need to map those scenarios. What is going to be the impact of COVID on the you know, the impact of COVID on the tracks that I mentioned: local demand, international demand, supply chains, human capital, and FDI and FDI inflows. What would that impact have on the budget, on the national budget projections and expectations, and what would that impact have on the delivery of the first year of the NDS? So that's what's still on the table, that we are now working out those scenarios. We are actually currently engaged with building those scenarios for the 2021 outlook.
All right. Now, I don't know if I'm not sure if Busisa Moyo is still with us. Busisa, I don't know if you're there because I would want to put that question to you, your economic outlook and projection for 2021. Okay, so unfortunately we have lost Busisa, but we really appreciate him coming on the program. We have come to the end of our program this afternoon. You've been watching the Mint Special Economic Panorama, our virtual discussion this afternoon, COVID-19 second wave, a business perspective, implications on business. This broadcast was brought to you by Zim Papers TV network, ZTN, and our partners, the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, LEDRIS. Don't miss Economic Panorama every Thursday live on Capitalk at 3 p.m. We'd like to thank our panelists, Sakai Kuvarika, she's Chief Executive Officer at the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, CZI, Busisa Moyo, a leading Zimbabwean industrialist and board chair of the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA. Thank you very much for appearing on the Mint Special. A final comment. How Zimbabwe's business sector and informal economy react and manage the current and ongoing situation under COVID-19 will to a great extent define how the economy will react to the shock of the pandemic. How the Zimbabwean government also reacts will become more and more vital if the current lockdown persists, and even if it does not, COVID-19 will continue in the short to medium term, and so complacency is not an option. It is clear it is no longer business as usual, and Zimbabwe's business and informal sectors needs to understand and adapt to this. What is clear is that COVID or no COVID, how it affects our managed today, although important, sight must not be lost about tomorrow, because tomorrow will definitely come. What does the future hold for Zimbabwe, its business and informal sector, its economy, and its citizens? While dealing with this pandemic, we must all never forget that there will be, hopefully soon after a COVID scenario, that all Zimbabweans must ensure that we plan for our future and we plan for it together. I'm Andy Hodges. Have a great weekend. Please, you all be safe.